And hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Chapters here on Armstrong Television. Chapters is the television show that profiles authors, editors, and publishers in West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. I'm Eliot Parker, and it's great to have you with us. We are delighted to have Beau Smith with us here today on Chapters to talk about his outstanding career as a graphic writer, as a comic book writer, and also talk about his new upcoming television program that's going to appear on the Science Fiction channel, on the SyFy channel. And we're delighted to have him here today, and he is a graduate of Marshall University. He's a native of Huntington, West Virginia. He spent 22 years of sales and marketing experience in the entertainment business. He's the former vice president of marketing and publishing for Eclipse Comics, Image Comics, Todd McFarlane Productions and McFarlane Toys, IDW Publishing, and currently serves as the director of product information for Troy Maker JUN Planning USA. And currently, Beau is spending his time busy as a career freelance writer, working on comics, video games, films, novels, and columns, as well as using his 22 years of experience in marketing and publishing on a consultant basis in entertainment. So we're delighted to have Beau Smith with us here today to talk about his outstanding career and what he's been working on and what he's got coming up. So Beau, welcome to Chapters. Good to have you here.
I appreciate you having me, Eliot.
So I'm really interested in how all this got started for you. How did you get interested in comics and writing for that kind of genre and that kind of audience? Where did it all start for you?
1958, actually. My mom and dad had bought me a Batman comic. It was Batman, I believe, 143. And, I was 4 years old. I could not read it, but I was mesmerized by the words and pictures. And I could kind of figure it out myself, what was going on, but I must have had them read that to me, I don't know how many times. So by the time it came to 1961, I was going to go into first grade. And I thought, oh, this is great. I'm finally going to be able to, read this comic. I thought, though, I was going to go to school that morning and come home that evening and be able to read that comic. And it doesn't work that way. But my fascination with comic books as a venue of storytelling really traces back to when I was 4 years old. And for whatever reason, it must be like, and I'm not comparing myself to it, but it must be like the first time Wayne Gretzky picked up a hockey stick or Brett Favre picked up a football. There's just some natural attraction, or some kid that gets a laugh in class and ends up becoming Don Rickles or, famous comedian. There's just some attraction there creatively that hit me. And third grade came around. We were on the playground. My teacher was asking each one of the kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And about that was about 1963. So back then, every boy wanted to be an astronaut or a cowboy, and girls wanted to be a teacher or a nurse. And I said, I want to write comic books. And literally, I got, the stink eye. Like, what? No, that doesn't. Maybe you could write for a newspaper. Maybe you could write for a magazine. And I said, no, I want to do comic books. But as school went on, that's what all my teachers told me, guidance counselors, whatever. And by the time I got to Marshall, I had Dr. Turner, and I was a journalism major. So we were doing things, and finally one day he pulled me aside and he goes, I know you like fiction. He goes, but this is journalism. He goes, and we have to write fact. He goes, and your stories are very good. They're very entertaining. He goes, but they've got to be truthful. Because I was wanting to enhance and embellish them, and you can't do that in journalism. So needless to say, I did not take a career in journalism. I ended up working retail. I worked construction inspector, worked in a warehouse, I did a lot of different stuff. And one thing that I noticed in each one of those jobs, Eliot, was I was not happy unless I had some sort of outlet for the creativity. And to be honest with you, I got to the age of 32, and I was working a job where it was retail, and there wasn't going to be much chance for advancement. At that point in my life, I'd recently been divorced. I was not living with my son. It was your typical slammed up against the wall moment. And I can remember leaving work. I went outside into the parking lot and sat on the tailgate of my pickup truck, and I said, you've always wanted to do comics. You're 32, which at that point in my life seemed like ancient. And I said, you're going to have to try it. At least go down swinging. So what I started doing was I've always bought comic books every week, from the local stores, and before that, hunting down drugstores and grocery stores. And I started, if I bought 5 comics that week, I wrote a letter immediately to the editor about that comic book. And I would make it as entertaining and constructive at the same time as I possibly could. And I would also sign all four of my names, Stephen, Scott, Beau Smith, to set myself apart from anybody else that was writing letters. I did anything I could. I studied the other letters to say, how can I, set myself apart? A little self-promoting, a little marketing even then, but if I was going to make this, there wasn't an internet then. There weren't fax machines. There was nothing. So I did that, and I started doing that pretty prolifically. I ended up having probably over 300 letters printed in comic books just from that. And the editors got to know my name. So I would go to these conventions, whether they be Chicago or San Diego, wherever, and I would meet these editors, and they would start going, "Oh, you're the guy with 4 names. I know you. Yeah, I like your letters." And they saw that I wasn't an axe murderer or anything, so a relationship built up. And I would correspond back and forth with them. They started to send me advanced copies of the comics in Xerox form, going, "Hey, we want a letters column. Would you mind, writing a letter?" I said, "Sure, glad to." And that went on for a little while. And then they started asking, "Have you ever thought about writing comics? Your letters are pretty entertaining and funny." I said, "Why, no, of course not. Sure, I'd like to take a stab at that." And they were nice enough to tell me how to pitch things. And then also Mike Barron, who is a prolific comic book writer and has been for years. Walter Simonson, writer, artist, who's just, fantastic. I had Robert Kanigher, who at that time, he was the guy that basically created Sergeant Rock. I had 3 of those guys take me under their wing, and they did not have to. I was just a guy writing letters. And they would send me their scripts saying, mechanically, this is what it has to look like. Creatively, you're going to have to provide that. So I would adjust my ideas to those scripts. And later on, Chuck Dixon and Tim Truman, 2 other prolific comic book writers and artists, did the same thing. So I was very fortunate to have mentors before people used the word mentor. And it was tormentor, which is things I did to my brothers when we were little. But that started it out right there. And in about 1986, Tim Truman, again, who I'd mentioned, said, "Eclipse Comics," he goes, "you've been in retail and sales and marketing for a long time. Well, they're looking for a sales manager for the direct market of comics. Are you interested?" And I said, "Yeah," but they were in Santa Rosa, California. I said, "As long as I don't have to move," because at that point my son was young, my parents were here, everything. I said, "As long as I don't have to move." And they go, no, you can do it all, we'll FedEx, and you'll have to travel quite a bit," which was fine. But that started that, so I ended up being their VP of marketing, and at the same time started writing comic books for them. So from 4th grade on the playground, is either be a comic book writer, or also wanted to be a milkman, because back then they drove the trucks, delivered the milk, and I thought I could drive around that cool truck and drink chocolate milk all day. But that was my backup plan, but that didn't happen. But all that from 1958, that Batman comic, to when I was 32 years old, and it's probably 87, and now it'll be 29 years actually this summer that I've gotten away with it.
That's great. Fantastic. That's a fantastic story. And I wanted to ask you about the process of writing a comic book. When you get an idea, you decide to sit down and sort of sketch out the details. What's that like? And I know that I imagine you have other people helping you with some of the imaging and that kind of thing. But how is writing what's it like to write a comic book? When you get the idea, the drafting, the revision, what is that process like?
It's controlled chaos. To be real honest with you, Eliot, we had a writer seminar at a convention. There was me and 6 other writers, and they were asking us this type of question: how do you write? And they were all, I do the outline, then I do this draft, and I'll do this. I take this process, and I'll go back with it. Me, to be very honest with you, and this is the only way, I make it up as I go. I mean, the editors want outlines. Some of them even want page-by-page breakdowns, which I will give them if I have to. If they don't ask, I don't give it to them, because I literally have an idea in my head. I will write down key things on a legal pad, and that's it. I mean, just a few sentences that I understand, and then I make it up as I go. Ideas will come to me when I'm walking the dog, literally, or when I'm in the shower, listening to the radio. All I have to do is hear sometimes a good line of dialogue or music, even though the lyrics won't have anything to do with the story I have in my head, but the music in my head, I'm seeing a video of my characters or the characters I'm writing. And then I just fly from there. Once I sit down at the computer, I go, and I have an idea where I want to end it, but from beginning to middle, it's fun. And if I have to rewrite something, every once in a while I do, just small things. But if I have to rewrite a big block, then it loses everything. It becomes very, very stale to me. But a very spontaneous and very impulsive writer, I guess you could say. And that would attribute to daydreaming and staring out the window in school. It was always, Stephen does good work, but we can't get him to pay attention, because at some point what they were talking about didn't interest me, and I would be, off on a tangent after that, which wasn't a good thing. But it's a real, Mark Wade, who is another well-known writer, turned to me in that seminar. He goes, how do you know, that's wrong. How do you do that? He goes, I would be lost, but he's a very precise guy, where I am fly by the seat of the pants type of thing. And it turns out my best stuff is when it just comes to me like that.
Yeah, very good. You've worked for DC Comics, Image Comics, Eclipse Comics, Dreamware Studios, Moonstone Books, so on and so forth. When you get the idea done, you've done the writing and in some cases the revision, as you were talking about, and you send that idea off to one of these comic book companies. What's the publication process like from there? What happens when you send the text to them? Then what happens next? What are the next steps? And then how long is it until that actual comic book comes out and then goes out into the stores?
It varies. If I'm doing work for hire work, like when I did the Star Wars story for Dark Horse, I did a Boba Fett. That was a case where I heard through the grapevine, hey, they're looking for writers for this. So I pitched a Boba Fett story to them, to the editor, and this was cold call, if you will. And the editor and I kind of knew each other's names, things like that, but there wasn't any real rapport. They liked the pitch that I'd sent, which was usually on this piece of paper, half that. That was about it. And they liked it and said, could you flesh that out just a little more? So I did, and that was a page and a half. And I got signed on for that. Once I got signed on, in this case, this is a work for hire, and this is Lucasfilm at the time, so you had to go through hoops. And I'd written 24, the TV show 24. I'd written the comic book and graphic novel for that as well, and had to go through the same process. They then send that pitch, refined pitch, to them to see if it's okay, to make sure there wasn't anything like I'd killed Jack Bauer off or anything like that. And to be honest with you, that process was pretty good, because I only try to give a page and a half. The more you give, I find the more mistakes you will step into that they can say, no, we don't want to do that. If you give them short and brief, then it's more likely to go through because they can't see any potholes. After that, then I was contracted to write the full script. I always write in full script, which is panel description telling the artist everything to draw. That doesn't mean I've got the whip and cracking it, but I do that to give them a real mood. And also, if there's a key point, if I were doing a story about us right now and you ended up murdering me with a camera, I wanted to make sure that reader sees that camera prominent in the scene, because that's going to be something that you're going to do me in with. So that's an important part. So I write in full script. That in turn goes back to the editor after I'm finished and all the dialogue. He then checks, not the panel descriptions so much for grammar and things like that, but the dialogue, and just to make sure everything's moving right. That generally is not a problem. I mean, there's very few times do you have a heavy rewrite, or sometimes they'll bring out something like, this is just any work, can you change this? And that's great, because that's enhancing it, and that's also giving the editors bounce back on that. Will help me write a better story a lot of times, because you're getting a fresh set of eyes. And from there, it'll go to the artist, the penciler. Let's say we're working, and he will pencil all that. And then he has to go back to the editor with what he's done. Once that's okayed, then it goes back to the inker. Okay, the inker is the one that goes over the pencils with the ink. And in these modern times, it's computers and stuff, a lot of them work on that. But he does that, and he has to send it back to the editor. So you're looking, and then after that, it's lettering and then coloring. So you're looking at anywhere from 2.5, 3 months, generally 6 months.
Okay.
It's right there. Like right now, I'm working on Wynonna Earp #3, but that won't be out till probably the beginning of summer. Issue 1, which comes out next week, I finished that back in November. So you see the process. It's a lot speedier now with technology, but that's the general process on that. It's neat because the editor really does work as a wrangler. He sees anybody's mistake. I would not want to be an editor. It sounds like way too much work to me, but they work very hard in doing that.
Excellent. I want to ask you also about comic books and comic books themselves, and readers of comic books. We've seen so many changes going on in the publishing industry with ebooks and technology, and you mentioned technology, how that's helped with comic book writing, but we see that on the fiction, nonfiction, other genre side. In your opinion, having written comic books for a long time, why do we still read comic books? So many things have changed in how we get information and what we read and how we read, but people still like comic books, and there's still stores that sell comic books. What is it about comic books, do you think, that has kept people's interest, and kids still today want to read them and want to buy them, and what is it about it that's made it so long lasting?
I think with me, there's an attraction for static pictures and words, and the fact that I know when I was a kid, if I read a Batman or a Superman book, even though they laid the story out and the character out, in my head as I was reading this, just like in television, they become your friend. They become someone you're inviting into your house, and you feel you know them, even though they are, they're fictional. And people always tended with comic books because it was drawn. Well, that's not the same as a movie or television, but actually it truly is. This is a fictional character that's made up. So I think it's that attraction. And I know as a kid, after I would read, say, a Fantastic Four comic, it wouldn't come out for 30 days. But during that 30 days, I was going, okay, this is going to happen. I don't want to, this is going to happen. This character, he would do this. And you're almost not reliving, but it's almost fan fiction in your head, what you're doing. And I think that's a big attraction. With comic books, the big change with DC and Marvel in the early 60s, where Marvel started overtaking DC, was because of storytelling. Stan Lee was basically selling soap operas to little boys because there was so much soap opera effect. And little boys would never say, oh, I kind of like, does Marvel Girl really like Professor X, or she likes Cyclops? They would never admit to anything like that, but it was in the comic. They could read it and get that human compassion without, having someone going, Smitty's a sissy, let's take his lunch money, that kind of thing. I know at least it was for me. Yeah, I just read it for the fighting. That's what we always used to say back then. But we really, that's what turned me onto the Marvel comics was, man, they're talking personally to me. I kind of feel like Spider-Man. He's down in the dumps. This is happening. He's not making good grades. Whatever, you related to it. And then Superman, it was hard for me to relate to. Superman. He was great at everything. So I think that plays a large part in it, and that these fictional characters are attractive to people. Now, what has changed is I grew up being a reader collector. We did not have internet and video games and everything, so our attention, we were outside playing or you were inside reading if it was raining. Today, their focus is taken so many places, they're not so much collectors, so they read it in a whole different way. They don't have the physical need to keep and reread, because back then 12 comics came out a month from Marvel. All right, you read those and you had to wait 30 days, for the next. And now it's just, it's everywhere. So the reason I think comics has kept everyone's attention, they've become the root for whether it's television shows, whether it's film. A lot of the filmmakers have been able to take characters, whether it's Iron Man, the Avengers, and make them appeal to, say, my brother, who didn't read any comics, but he goes sees every superhero movie, every science fiction movie. I've tried to say, here, you like the Avengers? Here's an Avengers comic. No, I don't want to. But it gives them a broader audience. Everybody knows who Iron Man is now. With the Deadpool movie coming up, everyone's going to know who Deadpool was, but before, they have no idea. So that does bring people into it. With Marvel and DC, using them as an example because they are big companies, that's going to sell a lot of merchandise, not just comic books per se, but everything from lunch boxes and underwear, whatever the going thing is, T-shirts. So it's taken on a whole new landscape now, and it's a more profitable one than just depending on comic books. Because there was one part in the 90s when the collectability fell out. Marvel had filed for bankruptcy. DC was not doing well in sales, and I was working for smaller publishers, and we were kind of iffy at that point. But once things started going bigger entertainment, that revived everything. We needed to get rid of a lot of that collectability aspect of it because we could not continue to be Beanie Babies or whatever at that point.
Oh, very interesting, very interesting. And in addition to being a comic book writer and a freelance writer, you're also a regular columnist for Busted Knuckles at Comics Bulletin, and also a regular columnist for From the Ranch for Sketch Magazine. So what are your columns about? How often do you write columns, and what are some of the things that you like to emphasize in your columns?
Well, I've been writing columns for various pop culture sites and magazines now. Impact Magazine, Comic Buyer's Guide were some, and currently Westfield Comics. That's the tough part because I'll be writing sometimes 2 to 3 a month and easily 2 sometimes a week. And it's all on pop culture of any sort, not just comic books. And sometimes, Eliot, it breaks down to I'm sitting in my office just, typing away, and I'll look around, what am I going to write about? I'll see an old comic laying there. Oh, I remember it. And start writing about that. Or sometimes I will think about, like recently, DC Comics is going to bring back all the Hanna-Barbera Saturday morning cartoon characters as comic book line. That was an easy column. Okay, I'm going to write my opinion on that, and that was a good one. Now I've got one due this Friday, and here it is Monday, and I have no idea. So Thursday night I'll probably do that one up. But it's very enjoyable because it also brings a different readership and a wider readership to me than just comic books. People that like anything with pop culture will read that. And hopefully a lot of times it'll turn them on to comics as well.
I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about your upcoming Wynonna Earp series that is airing on on the SyFy channel or the Science Fiction channel. A 13-episode arrangement, 13-episode taping schedule for that program. Tell us a little bit about who Wynonna Earp is and how did your comic line and this character get picked up by the SyFy channel?
I came up with Wynonna Earp actually, again, back when I was a little kid. Only back then I always wanted Wyatt Earp to fight monsters. I would love the Universal monsters. I loved the Old West, and I wanted some way to connect those two. Well, it wasn't until about 1994 that I thought, well, nobody wants Westerns anymore. They're not popular. And I said, the monsters they want today they scare even me. So I was trying to think of that, and I thought, well, why not make it a descendant of Wyatt Earp? She's now a U.S. Marshal today, only she doesn't hunt regular fugitives and work with the Witness Protection Program. She does this for paranormal crime. She hunts paranormal criminals. So if you've got a vampire that's been cheating on his taxes, you've got a werewolf that's pushing drugs to other werewolves, bottom line is she's going to hunt them down and bring them in. If, let's say, a pre-decay zombie rats out his compadres, well, then he's going to need to go in a Witness Protection Program. Well, there's one for paranormal, and she does that as well. So that was it. She worked for the Black Badge Division, and this was created by Teddy Roosevelt back when he was police commissioner in New York. He found out there's paranormal organized crime. If the general public knows about this, it's going to cause a panic. And when he became president, he formed the Black Badge Division using part of his old Rough Riders and other people that he knew in his connections. Well, Wyatt Earp was one of them because they were around at the same time. And it generated, now she's, fourth great grand, and she's doing it. So that's the general premise of it. And she goes all over the country hunting down paranormal crime.
Very nice.
That was 1996 when the first issues were published. That was, well, this year's 20 years. And IDW Publishing took it over. It was done by Image Comics, and in 2000 they took it over. And we did probably, I'd say, easily over 300 pages worth of comics, graphic novels, and comics from that. And Ted Adams, who's the CEO and the publisher, from day one when we did this at Wildstorm and Image, he told me, he goes, this needs to be a TV series. And this is 20 years ago. When he took over and started, when he created, IDW Publishing, he says, we want to do it here because this needs to be a TV show. It's perfect for a TV show. And we were optioned a few years back by Fox. At the same time, they optioned Fringe and Dollhouse. So that's J.J. Abrams and Joss Whedon. and they optioned Wynonna Earp. Well, that's great. You know, that was pretty stoked about that. But you got to think, okay, that's 3 science fiction shows. Who's at the bottom of the food chain there? Okay, we got these other 2 out. Okay, well, we'll do that. Well, they optioned it for 2 years and it ran out because these other shows were doing great. I was happy for JJ and Joss, but not for me. And he goes, well, that's all right. He goes, well, we're going to find a home for this because this is good stuff. And they hooked up with Circle of Confusion, which reps a lot of the comic book community. They're a part of Walking Dead and things like that. So they hooked up with them. David Ozer is the head of entertainment for IDW Entertainment, and Rick Jacobs for Circle of Confusion. And along with Ted, they had the same passion. And they found not only one audience, but they started finding a lot. Everyone was really interested in Wynonna Earp at that point because they were seeing the TV show Supernatural meets Buffy. Mm-hmm. And people still can't get enough of both those. So they thought, this is that, plus you have it's kind of this modern Western feel to it. And they had a lot of people very interested. It happened very, very quickly. I'd say within the last year, everything went bang, 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 just lined up. SyFy channel was extremely interested. And they've been really, let's move. And next thing I do, let's put it this way. A year ago, all this was just happening. Now here, a year later, like I said, they're wrapping up the 13th episode this week. So it's been a jam-packed year, Eliot.
That sounds like it. It sounds like it. So when will the Wynonna Earp series begin?
Okay, the SyFy episodes start April 1st. So everybody's still going, Beau, you're just kidding. It's April 1st. But April 1st, 10 o'clock p.m. on SyFy. That will run every week, 13 episodes, which is another thing. We did not have to do a pilot. It just, they signed 13. They believed in it that strongly. 13 episodes right off the bat. That happens April 1st, just here in a few weeks, actually. And the new comic book series starts next week and goes from there. It's an ongoing series. So, and in fact, in issue 3, the one I'm writing right now, takes place in Huntington, West Virginia, and Wayne County, West Virginia, where I live in Wayne County. And it is a illegal paranormal underground fight club where they've got these hybrid demon humans taking regular humans and having a fight with them, fight club type of thing with them. And Wynonna Earp and her crew are there to stop them. So everything will take place not only in West Virginia, but in Huntington and in Wayne.
Fantastic.
So,
fantastic.
And everyone's worried that I'm going to portray the stereotypical West Virginian, and I can tell you that's part of the twist of the story. It's not your stereotypical cliche that everyone thinks. So
it sounds fantastic.
We're going to put a good turn on it.
Good, very good. Well, Beau, in our final moments with you, if someone wants to get in contact with you, to talk to you about your work, or to find your columns, or to pick up more information about your comics, things that you've done, or just get in touch with you, where can they get your comics? Where can they find your column? How can they reach out to you?
As far as my comics, they can, I'll just use locally here. They're in any comic store that you can find, but here locally, there's Purple Earth and Comic World in Huntington, the Inner Geek and the Superhero Creamery in Ashland. They're in any comic shop that you can, or you can order them, of course, online from anywhere like that. As far as getting a hold of me, I have a website, which is www.flyingfistranch.com. And they can always get a hold of me there. In fact, anyway, it's Google Beau Smith, writer. It'll show up a million. I'm on Wikipedia. There's a million ways to get a hold of me. The best thing to do, though, is just have people send me money at my P.O. box and, no return envelope or anything like that. That's what I favor. So
very good, very good. Beau Smith has been our guest, freelance comic book writer and creator of the upcoming Wynonna Earp series that will be airing on the Science Fiction Channel first part of April for a 13-episode series. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. Very interesting. Congratulations
thank you
for all your success.
For letting me come to the party and not tossing me out.
Well, that's great.
We need to add provocateur at the end of that. I've always wanted that attached to my name.
We can call you the provocateur.
I like that.
The comic book's provocateur.
I like that a lot. As long as I don't have to say it fast.
That's right. And in my case, spell it. That would be another problem. So, congratulations.
Oh, no, thank you, Eliot. It's been
pleasure
great.
to be here.
Been great.
And we want to take a moment to say thanks to Charlotte McCoy and the staff of Empire Books and News for providing our taping space today and other on-site support and assistance. We encourage you to stop by Empire Books and News and check out many of the authors, editors, and publishers' works that have been featured here on Chapters. You've got them for sale, and they've got them for sale right here at Empire Books and News, so we encourage you to stop by and check that out. Plus, if you're a magazine reader, they've got the largest selection of magazines in the tri-state right here at Empire Books and News. If you want to reach out to us here on the program via email, we have an email address that is appearing right here at the bottom of the screen, lp4@zoominternet.net. So we encourage you to keep those comments and feedback coming. And if you want to go back and watch a previous episode of Chapters, we've made that available to you through the Armstrong One Wire page on YouTube. That address is also right here at the bottom of the screen. Once you type that address in, be sure that you click on the Chapters tab, and from there you can find over 80 episodes of author, publisher, and editor interviews from our 3+ years of programming here on Chapters. And we know many of you have done that, and we certainly encourage you to continue to do that. And we thank you so much for the comments that you've left in the comments fields about those episodes that you've seen. And if you want to check out an opportunity, an open mic event opportunity where you can hear works by some local and regionally published authors or some novice authors that are looking for an audience, the Writers Can Read event is the third Monday of each month right here at Empire Books and News, 7 o'clock until 8:30. You don't have to have anything published, you just have to have something that you're working on. Bring a 10 to 15 minute piece of that writing, and you can share that with an audience of interested readers and writers right here at Empire Books and News. That's the Writers Can Read event, third Monday of each month, right here at Empire Books and News from 7 o'clock until 8:30. And we encourage you to check that out. If you've been before, please come back. And if you haven't been, we encourage you to stop by and participate in that program. It's a great event, a good opportunity to hear what some of the writers in our region are working on, both published and unpublished. And that's going to do it for us this time on Chapters, but please come again next time. And in the meantime, stay tuned to this station for news and views that impact you and your community.